Mark prided himself on being a family man. With 2 kids under 10, a loving wife, Lily, and a demanding but fulfilling job, his life was busy, but it was a life he cherished. So, when Lily suggested a professional family photo shoot for their upcoming anniversary, Mark was all in. "I want something timeless," Lily had said, flipping through Pinterest boards full of picturesque family portraits. "Something the kids can look back on and cherish when they're older." Mark smiled at her enthusiasm. Lily had always been the sentimental one, the one who remembered anniversaries and planned thoughtful surprises. He, on the other hand, was more practical, a problem solver, a man of action. So, when it came to booking the photographer, Mark took charge. He found Tom, a highly recommended local photographer with glowing reviews online. Tom was known for his candid shots, capturing moments of joy and connection that felt genuine rather than staged. Mark liked the idea of that, real moments captured forever. The shoot was scheduled for a sunny Saturday morning at a park near their house. Lily had picked out coordinating outfits for the family, pastel tones that would look perfect against the park's greenery. The day arrived, and everything seemed to go smoothly. The kids laughed and played, Tom snapped away with his camera, and even Lily, who sometimes got flustered under pressure, seemed relaxed and happy. "Great session," Tom said as they wrapped up. "I'll edit these and have them ready for you by next week. You'll love them." Mark thanked him, thinking nothing of it. A week later, Mark received an email from Tom with a link to the edited photos. He clicked it eagerly, excited to see the final product. As the images loaded, his heart swelled. There they were, his family, laughing and smiling, captured in perfect detail. The kids' faces were alight with joy, and Lily looked radiant, her arm looped around Mark's as they stood together under the dappled sunlight. But as he scrolled through the gallery, something unexpected caught his eye. One of the thumbnails wasn't a family photo at all. It was a candid shot of Lily, but she wasn't with Mark or the kids. She was standing near the edge of the park, leaning against a tree, her head tilted toward a man Mark didn't recognize. The man was tall, dressed casually in a fitted t-shirt and jeans, and his body language was intimate. He was leaning in close, his hand resting lightly on the small of Lily's back, while she smiled up at him, her face glowing with an expression Mark couldn't quite place. Mark's stomach dropped. For a moment, he tried to convince himself it was nothing, a stranger asking for directions, maybe, or a harmless moment taken out of context. But as he zoomed in on the photo, his doubts grew. The man's hand lingered just a little too close, and Lily's posture seemed familiar, as if this wasn't the first time they'd stood this close. Mark scrolled further, his pulse racing, and found another photo. This one was blurrier, but it showed the man and Lily walking toward the parking lot together, their heads bent as if deep in conversation. Why would Tom include these photos? Had it been a mistake? Or had he seen something during the shoot that Mark hadn't? Mark closed the gallery, his hands trembling. He didn't want to jump to conclusions, but the images were burned into his mind. He had to know the truth. That evening, Mark tried to act normal, but his mind was spinning. At dinner, he watched Lily closely, searching for any signs of guilt or unease. She seemed completely at ease, laughing at the kids' stories and chatting about her day. "Did you see the photos yet?" she asked, glancing at him over her wine glass. Mark hesitated. "Yeah," he said. "They look great." Lily smiled. "Tom's talented, isn't he? I'm so glad we went with him." Mark forced a smile, nodding. "Yeah, he did a good job." But inside, the doubt gnawed at him. Should he confront her now? Or should he wait until he had more information? The next day, Mark called Tom. "Hi, Tom, it's Mark," he said, keeping his tone casual. "Hey, Mark. Did you get the photos? What did you think?" "They're great," Mark said. "But I had a question about a couple of them." There were a few, candid shots of Lily with another man. Were those meant to be in the gallery? There was a pause on the other end of the line, and when Tom spoke again, his tone was cautious. Yeah, Tom said. I wasn't sure if I should include those, but, well, I thought you'd want to see them. Mark's heart pounded. Why? Tom hesitated again. Look, I don't want to get involved in anyone's business, but I noticed something during the shoot. That guy showed up about halfway through. He wasn't part of your family, so I kept an eye on him. I saw him talking to Lily, and it looked personal. I figured it wasn't my place to ask, but when I was going through the photos, I thought you should know. Mark's grip tightened on the phone. Did you hear what they were talking about? No, Tom said. I was too far away. But I'm sorry if I've caused any trouble. I just thought you'd want the full picture, so to speak. Mark thanked Tom and hung up, his mind racing. If the photographer had noticed something, then it wasn't just in his head. Something was going on, and he needed to figure out what it was. That night, as Lily tucked the kids into bed, Mark sat in the living room, staring at the photos on his laptop. The image of Lily with the stranger felt like a puzzle piece he couldn't fit into place. Who was this man? And why hadn't Lily mentioned him? When Lily came downstairs, Mark closed the laptop and looked up at her. Hey, he said, his voice calm but firm. Can we talk? Lily froze, her smile faltering. Of course, she said, sitting down across from him. What's on your mind? Mark hesitated, choosing his words carefully. I saw something in the photos Tom sent us, he said. A couple of shots of you with someone else. A man. Who was he? Lily's face went pale, and for a moment, she looked genuinely caught off guard. Oh, she said, forcing a laugh. That was just, a friend. Someone I ran into at the park. It was nothing. Mark's eyes narrowed. Nothing. Tom said he saw you talking to him for a while. You even walked off together. Lily shifted uncomfortably. Mark, you're overthinking this. He's just a colleague from work. I wasn't expecting to see him, that's all. Mark didn't respond immediately, studying her carefully. Her explanation sounded plausible, but her body language told a different story. Why didn't you mention it? He asked. Lily shrugged, avoiding his gaze. I didn't think it was important. Mark leaned forward, his voice steady but cold. I think it's very important, Lily. And I want the truth. Lily's forced smile didn't reach her eyes as she shifted in her seat. Mark could see the tension in her posture, the way her fingers twisted together in her lap. There's nothing to tell, Mark, she said, her voice slightly strained. It was just a random encounter. He's a coworker, like I said. Mark kept his gaze steady, his tone calm but unyielding. Then why didn't you tell me about it when we got home? Why keep it a secret? Lily hesitated, her lips pressing into a thin line. Because I knew you'd react like this, she said, her voice defensive. You're making something out of nothing. It was an innocent conversation, Mark. Mark leaned back, folding his arms. Innocent enough for Tom to think I'd want to see the pictures. He thought it looked personal, Lily. What am I supposed to think? Lily's face flushed, and she stood abruptly, crossing her arms. You're being ridiculous, she said. Tom doesn't know me. He doesn't know anything about my life. And you're going to take his word over mine? Mark felt a wave of frustration rise in his chest, but he forced himself to stay calm. I'm not taking anyone's word, he said. I'm asking you to be honest with me. If it's really nothing, then prove it. Lily opened her mouth to respond, but then her phone buzzed on the coffee table, cutting her off. Both of them glanced at the screen, and Mark's heart skipped a beat when he saw the name on the notification, Eric, work. Mark's eyes flicked to Lily, who quickly grabbed the phone and turned it face down. The motion was so quick, so deliberate, that it sent a chill down Mark's spine. "Eric," he said slowly. "Is that the man from the park?" Lily froze, clutching the phone in her hand. For a long moment, she didn't answer. "Lily," Mark said, his voice low and firm. "Is it him?" Finally, she sighed, sitting back down on the couch. "Yes," she admitted quietly. "It's him." Mark felt like the ground beneath him was shifting. "And what does Eric want?" "It's about work," she said quickly. "We're working on a project together, and he had a question about one of the deliverables." "At this hour?" Mark asked, his skepticism evident. Lily's shoulders slumped. "Mark, this is getting out of hand. Eric is just a coworker. That's it. There's nothing going on between us." But Mark wasn't convinced. After their tense conversation, Lily went upstairs, leaving Mark alone with his thoughts. He stared at the photos again, his frustration mounting. Something didn't add up. If it really was just work, why was Lily being so evasive? The next morning, while Lily was in the shower, Mark took a step he had never imagined he would. He checked her phone. His hands trembled as he unlocked it, guilt and desperation twisting in his chest. He opened her messages and found a text thread with Eric. At first glance, it seemed professional, discussions about deadlines, reports, and client feedback. But as he scrolled further, the tone of the messages shifted. "Eric, you looked great yesterday. That dress suits you." "Lily, thanks. It's one of my favorites." "Eric, I don't know how you do it, balancing work, family, and still looking amazing." "Lily, you're sweet, Eric. Thanks for saying that." Mark's chest tightened as he read the exchange. While the messages weren't overtly romantic, they were far too personal for his liking. Then, toward the bottom of the thread, he found something that made his stomach drop. "Eric, let's meet again soon. Yesterday wasn't enough. Lily, let me figure out a time. I'll text you." Mark stared at the screen, his pulse racing. Again. How many times had they met? And why hadn't Lily mentioned it? When Lily came downstairs, Mark was waiting for her. "Why didn't you tell me you've been meeting Eric outside of work?" he asked, holding up her phone. Lily's eyes widened, and she froze in place. "You went through my phone?" she asked, her voice sharp with disbelief. "Don't turn this on me," Mark said, his tone firm. "Answer the question, Lily. How many times have you met Eric outside of work?" Lily looked away, her hands clenched at her sides. "A few," she admitted finally. "But it wasn't anything inappropriate. We were just discussing work." "Over drinks? Alone in the park?" Mark pressed. "It wasn't like that," Lily exclaimed. "I didn't want you to worry, so I didn't tell you. But nothing happened, Mark. I swear." Mark shook his head, his frustration mounting. "Then why is he texting you about meeting again? Why didn't you set boundaries?" Lily hesitated, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I didn't mean for it to get complicated," she said quietly. "Eric's been going through a tough time, and I was just trying to be there for him. But maybe I should have handled it differently." "Maybe?" Mark said, his voice rising. "Lily, this isn't just about Eric. It's about us. How am I supposed to trust you if you're hiding things from me?" Lily's tears spilled over, and she sank onto the couch, her shoulders shaking. "I didn't mean to hurt you," she whispered. "I was trying to keep everything from falling apart." Mark stared at her, his emotions a tangled mess of anger, hurt, and confusion. He wanted to believe her, but the evidence was mounting against her. That night, Mark called Tom again. "Tom, do you have any more photos from the shoot?" he asked. "Anything you didn't send me?" Tom hesitated. "Actually, I do," he said. "There were a few shots I didn't think you'd want to see." "Send them to me," Mark said, his voice tight. A few minutes later, Tom emailed him a new set of photos. As Mark opened them, his heart sank. One of the images showed Eric and Lily standing closer than before, their faces inches apart. The way Eric looked at her, the way her hand rested lightly on his arm, it was undeniable. Mark closed the laptop, his hands trembling. The truth was staring him in the face, and he couldn't ignore it any longer. Mark sat in silence, staring at the photos on his laptop. The air in the room felt heavy, pressing down on him as the truth began to solidify. The way Eric looked at Lily in those photos, the proximity, the body language, it wasn't professional, not by any stretch. Mark had wanted answers, but now that he had them, he wasn't sure he was ready to face what they meant. He closed the laptop and leaned back in his chair, his mind racing. If Lily was telling the truth, and she was only trying to support Eric through a difficult time, why hadn't she drawn a clear line between them? And if she wasn't being truthful, how far had this gone? The thought sent a surge of anger and hurt coursing through him. He needed clarity, and he wasn't going to get it by sitting in the dark. The next evening, Mark decided to confront Lily again. He waited until the kids were asleep, the house quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator. When Lily came downstairs, Mark was sitting in the living room, the photos open on his laptop. "Lily," he said, his voice steady but firm. "We need to talk. Now." Lily froze when she saw the images on the screen, her face going pale. "Mark, Don't," he interrupted, holding up a hand. "I want the truth. No more excuses, no more half-truths. I've seen the texts. I've seen the photos. I know this isn't just about work. So tell me, what's really going on with you and Eric?" Lily's eyes filled with tears, and she sank onto the couch, burying her face in her hands. For a long moment, she said nothing, the silence stretching between them like a chasm. Finally, she looked up at him, her voice trembling. "It's not what you think, Mark," she said. "I swear, nothing physical happened. But I let it get too close. I didn't set boundaries, and I let him lean on me in ways I shouldn't have." Mark's jaw tightened. "Why? Why would you do that?" "Because I felt unappreciated," Lily admitted, her voice breaking. "Lately, it's felt like we're just going through the motions, like we're roommates instead of partners. And then Eric came along, and he made me feel seen, like I mattered." Mark's heart twisted at her words. "You don't think I appreciate you?" Lily shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "It's not that, Mark. I know you love me, but sometimes it feels like we've lost each other in the chaos of work and kids and life. And I didn't know how to tell you that without making you feel like you weren't enough." Mark sat back, her words hitting him like a punch to the gut. Had he been so focused on providing for their family that he'd missed the signs of Lily's loneliness? "But why Eric?" he asked, his voice softer now. "Why not come to me instead?" Lily hesitated, wiping her eyes. "I don't know," she said. "It was easier, I guess. He was there, and it felt safe to talk to someone who wasn't part of everything else." Mark nodded slowly, his emotions a tangled mess. He wanted to be angry, to lash out, but he also couldn't ignore the guilt gnawing at him. Had he unknowingly pushed her into seeking comfort elsewhere? The next morning, Mark made a decision. If Lily was being honest about nothing physical happening, he needed to hear it from Eric. Confronting him was a risk, but Mark couldn't move forward without knowing the full truth. He found Eric's number in Lily's phone and called him, his hands trembling as he waited for the line to connect. "Hello." Eric's voice was calm, almost disarming. "Eric, this is Mark," he said, his tone firm. "Lily's husband." There was a brief pause before Eric responded. "Mark," he said, his voice slightly tense. "What can I do for you?" "I think you know why I'm calling," Mark said. "I want to know the truth about what's going on between you and my wife." Eric sighed. Mark, I understand how this must look, but I promise you, nothing's going on. Lily and I are just co-workers. We've worked closely on a few projects, and we've gotten to know each other, but that's it. And the texts? The meetings? The way you look at her in those photos? Mark pressed. I won't deny that I care about Lily, Eric admitted. She's an incredible woman. But I respect your marriage, Mark. I'd never cross that line. Mark's grip tightened on the phone. So, you're telling me this is all in my head? That Lily's been lying to me for no reason? Eric hesitated. Look, I can't speak for Lily, he said carefully. But I can tell you this, whatever feelings I might have had, I never acted on them. And as far as I know, neither has she. Mark exhaled slowly, trying to process Eric's words. Was he telling the truth? Or was he just covering his tracks? That night, Mark and Lily sat down together after the kids were in bed. Mark relayed his conversation with Eric, watching Lily's reaction closely. He said nothing happened, Mark said. But he admitted to having feelings for you. Did you know about that? Lily's eyes widened, and she shook her head. No, she said quickly. I didn't. I thought we were just friends. I didn't realize he felt that way. Mark studied her, searching for any sign of deceit. She seemed genuinely surprised, but after everything, it was hard to trust his own instincts. What happens now? Lily asked, her voice small. Mark took a deep breath, his emotions swirling. That depends on you, he said. If we're going to move forward, I need to know that you're committed to us. No more secrets, no more meeting Eric, no more lying. Lily nodded, tears streaming down her face. I am, she said. I'll cut all ties with him. I'll do whatever it takes to fix this, Mark. I love you. Mark felt a flicker of hope at her words, but the road ahead still felt uncertain. Rebuilding trust would take time, and he wasn't sure if they'd ever fully recover. For now, though, they had a starting point, a chance to piece their life back together, one step at a time. The days after their emotional conversation were tense. Lily kept her promise, cutting all ties with Eric. She deleted his number, blocked him on her phone, and emailed her HR department to request a reassignment so she wouldn't have to work directly with him. She assured Mark she was doing everything possible to rebuild the trust they'd lost. But trust wasn't something that could be restored overnight. Mark still found himself second-guessing her words, questioning her every move. Every time her phone buzzed, every time she left the house, a nagging voice in the back of his mind whispered, what if she's still lying? It wasn't just Lily's actions that haunted him. Eric's words lingered too, particularly the part about feelings he never acted on. It sounded like a carefully constructed defense, the kind of thing someone would say to minimize their guilt without fully absolving themselves. Mark couldn't let it go. One afternoon, Mark's resolve to uncover the truth hardened. He called Sarah, Eric's assistant, the one who had mentioned Ryan's manipulative tendencies when Mark had spoken to her earlier. Sarah, it's Mark again, he said when she picked up. I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. Okay, Sarah said, her voice cautious. Did Eric ever talk about Lily? Mark asked. Anything, personal? Sarah hesitated, and Mark's stomach tightened. Please, he urged. I just need to know. After a long pause, Sarah sighed. Eric was fond of Lily, she admitted. He talked about her sometimes. Said she was smart, kind, the kind of person who made people feel special. But he never outright said he was in love with her or anything. Mark clenched his jaw. What about their meetings? Did he ever mention those? He mentioned running into her at the park once, Sarah said. He was thrilled about it, like it was fate or something. But honestly, Mark, I think he liked the attention more than anything. He's a bit of a narcissist. Mark exhaled, trying to process her words. It sounded like Eric had been infatuated with Lily, but maybe it hadn't been mutual. Was that enough to absolve her? "Thanks, Sarah," he said. "No problem," she replied. "And Mark? For what it's worth, I don't think Lily meant to hurt you. She always spoke highly of you. Whatever this is, I hope you can work through it." When Mark got home, Lily was sitting on the couch, flipping through a magazine. She looked up as he walked in, her expression cautious. "How was your day?" she asked. "Fine," Mark said, sitting down across from her. He hesitated, then added, "I talked to Sarah today." Lily's face paled slightly, but she kept her tone calm. "Oh. She said Eric was infatuated with you," Mark said. "That he talked about you like you were something special." Lily sighed, setting the magazine down. "Mark, I didn't know," she said. "If I had, I would have put an end to things sooner." "Would you have?" Mark asked, his voice tinged with doubt. Lily flinched at his words, her eyes filling with tears. "Yes, Mark. I would have. I know I messed up. I should have told you everything from the beginning. I should have drawn clearer boundaries. But I never thought it would come to this." Mark leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. "Do you love me, Lily?" he asked quietly. Lily's eyes widened, and she reached for his hand. "Of course I do," she said. "You're my husband, the father of my children. I love you more than anything. Then why did you let someone else take up so much space in your life?" Mark asked, his voice breaking. Lily's tears spilled over, and she shook her head. "I don't know," she whispered. "I was stupid. I was lonely. I let myself believe it was harmless when it wasn't. But Mark, I swear to you, nothing physical happened. I would never betray you like that." Mark searched her face, looking for any sign of deceit. She seemed genuine, but the hurt and doubt still gnawed at him. "I want to believe you," he said. "But it's going to take time. You've broken something, Lily. And I don't know if it can ever be fully repaired." Lily sobbed, clutching his hand. "I'll do whatever it takes," she said. "I'll go to counseling. I'll give you access to my phone, my emails, everything. Just don't give up on us." Mark nodded slowly. "Okay," he said. "We'll try. But this is the last chance, Lily. No more lies. No more secrets." Lily nodded, her grip on his hand tightening. "I promise," she said. The weeks that followed were difficult. Mark and Lily started couples counseling, where they worked through their issues with a neutral mediator. Mark opened up about his feelings of betrayal, while Lily expressed her regret and explained her motivations in more detail. Slowly, they began to rebuild the foundation of their relationship, though the process was far from easy. Eric, meanwhile, disappeared from their lives completely. Mark heard through Sarah that he had transferred to a different branch of the company, likely to avoid further complications. The knowledge brought some relief, though it didn't erase the pain of what had happened. One evening, months later, Mark sat on the back porch, watching the sunset. Lily joined him, 2 glasses of wine in her hands. She handed him one and sat beside him, the silence between them comfortable for the first time in a long while. "Thank you," Lily said softly. "For what?" Mark asked. "For giving me another chance," she said. "For believing in us, even when it felt impossible." Mark took a sip of his wine, nodding. "I wouldn't have done it if I didn't think we were worth it," he said. Lily rested her head on his shoulder, and for the first time in months, Mark felt a glimmer of hope. They still had a long way to go, but they were moving forward, together.